Right now, Central Park is the green beating heart of Manhattan. 40 million people walk through it every single year. They jog around the reservoir, picnic on the Great Lawn, and snap photos at Bethesda Fountain like it has always been there. But in the past, it was not always a park. Before the first tree was planted, this land was rocky wilderness, swampy lowland, and home to real communities of real people who were forced out to make way for a vision.
So with the help of AI, let us walk through the entire history of this place, year by year,
From the very first idea to the park you see today. Our story begins in 1853, when New York City was growing at a staggering pace. Immigrants were pouring in, buildings were going up, and Manhattan was becoming one of the most densely packed places on Earth. But there was a problem. The city had almost no public green space, no place for ordinary people to breathe, to walk, to escape the noise and the grime. City leaders, inspired by the great public parks of London and Paris, began pushing for a large-scale park that would be open to everyone regardless of class or background. In 1853, the New York State Legislature officially authorized the creation of a public park covering more than 700 acres in the center of Manhattan. The big debate was where exactly it should go. Some wanted it up in Harlem, others closer to the developed part of the city. Eventually, they settled on a rocky, swampy stretch of land running from 59th Street to 106th Street. It was not pretty. It was not manicured. But it was available, and city planners believed it could be transformed into something extraordinary. With the land selected, the city held a design competition in 1857. The winners were Frederick Olmsted and Calvert, Vaux, two visionary landscape architects who submitted a plan they called the Greenward Plan. Their idea was radical for the time. Instead of formal gardens and geometric paths, they envisioned lush rolling meadows, winding walkways, natural-looking lakes, and dense woodlands. They wanted the park to feel like an escape from the city, a place where visitors could forget they were on an island surrounded by millions of people. But before any of that could happen, the land had to be cleared. And this is the part of the story that does not make it onto the postcards. The city used eminent domain to seize homes, churches, and entire communities. The most significant of these was Seneca Village, a predominantly black settlement of about 264 people located on the west side of the proposed park. These were homeowners, churchgoers, and working families who had built a real community from the ground up. In 1857, they were forced out of their homes to make way for the park. Their buildings were torn down, their land was taken, and their story was largely erased from the official narrative for over a century. It is a painful chapter, and it deserves to be remembered every time someone walks through those gates. Construction moved quickly once the clearing was done. Workers blasted through rock, filled in swamps, and began sculpting the raw terrain into something resembling Olmsted and Vaux' grand vision. By late 1858, the first sections of Central Park were opened to the public. New Yorkers who had never seen anything like it arrived by stagecoach and streetcar to walk on freshly laid paths through woodland areas and newly planted lawns. It was not finished, not even close, but it was already unlike anything the city had ever offered its people. The momentum did not stop. In 1859, the city purchased additional land to extend the park northward, eventually pushing its boundary up to 110th Street. This brought the total area to 843 acres, the size we know today. Workers continued reshaping the landscape on a massive scale, moving enormous amounts of earth to create rolling hills, damming streams to form the lake and the pond, and planting thousands of trees and shrubs by hand. Olmsted and Vaux supervised every detail, insisting that even the man-made features look completely natural. They designed the lake with sudden curves and hidden coves so that it would feel like a real body of water, not a manufactured one. In 1862, the graceful Bow Bridge was completed, arching over the lake in a design that would become one of the most photographed spots in all of New York City. Construction continued through the 1860s, though the Civil War slowed progress for a time. Workers laid out the Grand Mall, a long, straight promenade lined with American elm trees that gave the park its first truly formal space. It was completed by 1873, and it immediately became a gathering place for fashionable New Yorkers who strolled beneath the canopy of elms in their finest clothes. During this same period, the magnificent Bethesda Terrace was built between 1869 and 1873, crowned by the Angel of the Waters fountain that remains one of the park's most iconic landmarks. Stone archways, rustic shelters, and winding carriage paths were added throughout the park, each one carefully designed to blend into the landscape as if it had always been there. By 1876, all major construction was finished. Central Park was now fully open to the public exactly as Olmsted and Vaux had envisioned it. It had rolling meadows, rugged woodlands, a grand reservoir, ornamental bridges, and formal gathering spaces all woven together into a seamless, naturalistic landscape. It was widely celebrated as the first professionally designed public park in the United States, and visitors came from around the world to see it. If you had stood near Bethesda Fountain in 1876, you would have watched park-goers in hoop skirts and top hats strolling down the mall, while, not far away, a real shepherd tended a flock of sheep grazing on what we now call Sheep Meadow. That was not a storybook scene. That actually happened, and it continued well into the 1930s. With construction complete, Central Park quickly became woven into the fabric of everyday New York. In 1871, a small collection of animals had been established in what would become the Central Park Zoo, giving families a reason to visit beyond the scenery. In 1877, the Dairy, a charming refreshment pavilion, opened near 65th Street. Carriage rides became a beloved tradition. Concerts on the mall bandstand drew crowds every weekend. Picnics spread across the meadows, and the park became the one place in Manhattan where all classes of people could share the same ground. Even as the city around it exploded upward with taller and taller buildings, Central Park remained green, open, and largely unchanged through the end of the 19th century. Olmsted and Vaux's naturalistic English landscape design held firm, offering New Yorkers a daily escape from the concrete and steel rising on every side. As the 20th century began, the park started evolving in new ways. In 1905, a children's carousel was installed in the lower meadows, adding a playful touch that generations of kids would grow up loving. Bethesda Terrace and Fountain became an even more popular gathering spot, hosting concerts and public events that drew thousands. But by the 1920s and 1930s, cracks were beginning to show. Decades of heavy use had taken a toll on the landscape. The city's population had grown enormously, and park budgets had not kept pace. Depression-era cuts made things worse. Paths crumbled, lawns wore thin, and the lush, naturalistic scenery that Olmsted had so carefully designed began to look tired and neglected. City officials were concerned, and the park needed a champion. That champion arrived in the form of Robert Moses, New York City's powerhouse parks commissioner. Starting around 1934, Moses launched an aggressive campaign to clean up and modernize Central Park. Using federal relief funds from the New Deal, he put thousands of unemployed New Yorkers to work restoring gardens, repaving paths, rebuilding crumbling structures, and replanting worn-out lawns. His team rebuilt the park's aging bathhouses, updated the zoo, and transformed the Great Lawn into a proper public gathering space. In 1940, the Woolman Rink opened on the site of an old reservoir, giving New Yorkers an ice skating destination that would become one of the park's most beloved wintertime traditions. Moses also oversaw the construction of new transverse roads and bridges around the park's edges to manage the city's growing automobile traffic. His methods were sometimes controversial, but there is no denying that Moses pulled Central Park back from the brink. By the time his work was done, the park felt reborn. But that revival did not last. By the 1960s and 1970s, New York City was spiraling into financial crisis, and Central Park paid the price. Budgets were slashed, maintenance crews were cut, and the park began a slow, painful slide into neglect. Trash piled up on paths and around fountains. Benches were vandalized, sidewalks cracked, and entire sections of the park became overgrown and unsafe. The Sheep Meadow, once a pristine gathering place, turned into a dusty, barren field. Carousels fell into disrepair. Fountains stopped working. By the late 1970s, Central Park had become a symbol of New York City's broader urban decay, a place that many residents avoided after dark. And yet, even during these hard years, the park never fully lost its spirit. Folk concerts at Rumsey Playfield drew crowds in the late 1960s. Joggers still circled the reservoir. Families still brought their children to play. The park was hurting, but it was not dead. It just needed someone to care for it again. That someone turned out to be not one person, but thousands of them. In 1980, concerned citizens officially founded the Central Park Conservancy, a private nonprofit organization dedicated entirely to rescuing the park from decades of neglect. This was the turning point in the modern history of Central Park. The Conservancy hired horticulturists, landscape architects, and gardeners whose sole mission was to restore the park to its original glory. Through the 1980s, they launched a massive, methodical restoration. They rebuilt crumbling bridges like the Gapstow Bridge, restored the mall's iconic American elm trees, renovated Bethesda Fountain and its surrounding terrace, reseeded barren lawns, and removed invasive plant species that had choked out native vegetation. Every project was guided by Olmsted and Vaux's original Greenward Plan, ensuring that the restored park honored the vision of its creators. In the 21st century, Central Park saw meaningful restoration. In 2013, the Hallett Nature Sanctuary reopened after a 13-year renovation, symbolizing the revival of neglected spaces. By 2020, a $15 million restoration of the Long Meadow recreated original landscapes inspired by Olmsted's vision. These efforts marked a turning point, showing the park was no longer just being preserved, but actively restored, strengthened, and brought back to life. Today, Central Park spans 843 acres and stands as a National Historic Landmark. With over 40 million annual visitors, it remains one of the world's most visited parks. From jogging trails to iconic landmarks like Bethesda Fountain, it blends recreation, culture, and nature. Home to diverse wildlife and rich history, the park continues to reflect Olmsted and Vaux's vision, preserved through decades of careful restoration. Central Park's story is one of creation, loss, neglect, and rebirth. It began as a bold idea in 1853, displaced real communities to become reality, survived wars and financial crises, fell into heartbreaking disrepair, and was brought back to life by people who refused to let it die. It is proof that a city can build something beautiful, lose it, and choose to fight to get it back. And every morning when the fog lifts off the lake and the first joggers hit the path, that choice is made all over again. Thanks for watching the video.
Don't forget to hit subscribe and drop your suggestions for new videos and recreations in the comments section below. See you in the next one.